Mr. Mukoki, thank you so much for your time. Just give us a reaction first on the keynote addresses that were delivered by the two heads of state.
Well, I think that they were coordinated in respect of the things that they spoke about, the need for investment, the need for infrastructure, the need to build Africa cooperation with the other Brics nations. I think that President Ramaphosa was very clear and very decided in respect of the things that need to happen and that we're hoping to see are actually going to happen in the space of investment. President Xi Jinping himself gave a very high-level speech. I thought that his speech was, in a way, very dynamic. He mentioned all the things that were very much important. He spent a lot of time speaking about technology and speaking about where the world was headed in respect of the fourth industrial revolution and the area of manufacturing and what the world is going to look like in the area of all the things that are coming up, including the merging and the gravitation between digital, physical, and biological worlds. So I think that these speeches were very, very important, and as well as the commitment that China, as a very huge and the biggest developing nation in the world, is very much interested in staying and building lasting partnerships in Africa. There will be an Africa-China summit, which he mentioned towards in the coming months, and he spent a lot of time talking about what is going to be expected in that particular regard. So far, I think that this was a very, very well coordinated and very well orchestrated meeting, and I think that everybody came here significantly very much prepared to talk about the things that are very much important.
The conversation around infrastructure development and innovation and technology as well has been dominating talks today here at this Brics Summit, Mr. Mukoki. And I'd just like to get your insight as a South African businessman. Out of this, how far do you think we are as South Africa in achieving that?
Well, in South Africa itself, we're not actually as far as where we actually ought to be. Let me give you an example. South Africa is probably electrified 85% of the time. We've got significant challenges in respect of the power utility itself, struggling from a capital formation point of view. And we as business complain all the time about the cost of electricity in South Africa is very high. So we're not going to be able to stomach, or we're not going to be able to absorb any of the higher tariff increases that are required. So something major needs to happen in respect of the energy sector in South Africa. The rest of Africa is only electrified 5% of the time. That's a huge challenge, because every time we speak to any of our members and investors in South Africa, we say, go and take advantage of opportunities in Africa. The first thing that people are going to ask you is, well, will I have consistent power where I'm going? Is there energy resource available at all times, and is it cheap enough? Secondly, the issue of logistics infrastructure, such as the rail infrastructure, because many of the countries in Africa are actually landlocked. Even though the minerals exist in the ground, you and I know you can't expect to use trucks and roads to try and ferry materials from one area all the way into the port so that you can export. So we need to build a very significant rail infrastructure that can enable us to be able to benefit and move both people and goods across the continent in a way that is fast and in a way that is actually cheap. The third component, especially as it relates to young people, because of the 1 billion or 1.2 billion people in Africa, depending on who you're speaking to, a huge majority, up to 75 to 80% of those people are people below the age of 35. They understand technology, but what we don't have is a very, very huge telecoms infrastructure, including in South Africa. There are many, many pockets in South Africa where you go, you will not get high-speed fiber. Data costs are considered to be very, very high. When we talk to the telcos, they will always consistently say, well, you need to talk to your government to release the spectrum. Because when you've got spectrum, we can be able to enable our own infrastructure to offer products that are much more cheaper. Data costs will also go down. And we need to deal with that particular problem in the rest of Africa as well. What it also does, which is very significant, as you saw 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when students at universities were complaining about free education, a high-speed telecoms infrastructure enables us to be able to teach those children cheaper, because the children sitting in Leboahomu somewhere or in Polokwane somewhere is able to access the very Wits university lecturer in mathematics 101 or 102 very, very easily, on an iPad or on a PC. The only thing that's preventing that today from happening is because data costs are actually going to be so expensive. So when you release the spectrum, you get the telcos to offer cheaper products in respect of data, and then you solve the question of free education in a way that is free and not just for South Africa, but for the rest of the continent. So that's why the issue of infrastructure is so important. And also, we can't get ready and get into this fourth industrial revolution if we don't fix the telecoms infrastructure. And telecoms goes hand in hand with energy, as you would understand.